I have spent decades watching smart, hardworking people go broke slowly, one small payment at a time. Most people think the problem is income. They are wrong. The real problem is three expenses hiding inside a normal monthly budget. Expenses that feel harmless because they are small and familiar. During my 60 years buying businesses and reading balance sheets, I learned that the gap between rich and broke rarely comes from one big mistake. It comes from small monthly bleeding that nobody stops to look at. Right now, the average household is losing thousands of dollars a year to three expenses that feel completely normal. Stay with me. By the end of this, you will know the exact three expenses to delete this month, not next year. Cut them, and you buy back years of your life. Janet and Mike ran a small photography business out of a rented studio. Together, they earned $9,000 a month, which put them well above the average family in their town. After 8 years in business, they had almost nothing saved. Not a dented savings account, nothing. They believed, like most people believe, that the answer to money trouble is more money. Earn more, spend the same, and the gap will fill itself in. That belief cost them roughly $11,000 a year in payments they never noticed, because a belief that feels true can still be wrong.
Run the number and the picture gets uglier. $11,000 a year, held for 20 years in a simple low-cost stock index fund earning a historical average return, grows past $600,000. Janet and Mike did not lose $11,000. They lost $600,000 of future freedom, one invisible payment at a time. More income did not fix them. A new model did. The new model is simple enough for an 11-year-old to repeat back to you. It is not about what you earn. It is about what leaves your account every single month without your permission. Money that makes money needs two things to work. It needs an amount, and it needs time. Every dollar you send to an expense you did not choose on purpose is a dollar that will never get the chance to make more dollars. That is the single idea that runs this entire video. Stop paying for things you never decided to buy, and start paying yourself the difference. I built a career studying which businesses survive and which ones quietly rot from the inside. Families work the same way a business works. During my years sitting across the table from people who built real wealth and watching plenty of people who never did, I noticed the winners all shared one habit. They treated their own household like a company with a monthly report, checking exactly where the cash went, instead of trusting a feeling of, "we're doing fine." A man I knew, a mechanic named Tom, earned less than Janet and Mike, about $5,000 a month. Tom sat down every 90 days and read his bank statement line by line, the way a company reads its expenses before a board meeting. He found 3 drains eating his paycheck. He killed all 3 inside a single month. 12 years later, Tom retired with more saved than most doctors I have met. Same effort, same hours worked. Different result, because Tom looked at 3 numbers most people never look at. Notice something else about Tom's story, because it matters more than the ending. Tom never once complained about his income. He never asked his boss for a raise before he asked himself a harder question first. Where is the money already going? Most people flip that order backward. They chase a bigger paycheck to solve a leak they have never actually located, and then act surprised when the leak simply grows to match the new paycheck. A bigger hose does nothing for you if the bucket underneath still has 3 holes in it. I have sat across the table from wealthy clients and broke clients using nearly identical incomes, and the split almost always traces back to this one habit. Wealthy households, without exception, know the exact number leaving their account every month on things that do not build their future. Struggling households, almost without exception, describe their spending in vague feelings instead of numbers, saying things like, "we're pretty careful," or "we don't waste much," without ever once opening the actual statement to check. A feeling is not a number, and only a number tells the truth. Those three numbers make up the entire framework for today. The first expense to delete is any payment that finances something losing value while you pay for it. The second is the slow leak of small recurring charges that multiply while you are not watching. The third is spending built to match the people around you instead of the life you actually want. Three expenses. Delete them, and the math starts working for you instead of against you. The first expense to delete is debt payments on things that lose value the moment you drive them off the lot or swipe the card. Car loans are the biggest offender here, but store financing and revolving credit card balances belong in the same trash can. Understand why this one expense outweighs almost everything else on a household budget. A car loses roughly 20% of its value in the first year alone. You are not just spending money. You are paying interest to own something that is shrinking in value every single month, which is close to the worst financial trade a person can make on purpose. Kill the first objection before it forms in your head. People say, "I need reliable transportation to keep my job." Fair enough. Reliable transportation and an $800 monthly payment on a brand new truck are two completely different things. A 4-year-old reliable car, paid in cash, gets a person to work exactly as well as a new one financed for 6 years. Kill the second objection. People say, "My credit score needs active credit lines to stay strong." A paid-off used car and a credit card used lightly and paid in full every month build the same score without a single dollar of interest paid to a bank. The bank does not need your interest payments to validate your worth as a person. Kill the third objection. People say, "Everyone finances a car, it's just how it's done." Not everyone building wealth finances a car. Most people building lasting wealth avoid financing depreciating things entirely because they understand the difference between a purchase and a bleed. Push back gently on one more version of this same excuse, because it shows up disguised as smart thinking. Some people say a car loan is fine because the interest rate is low, sometimes near zero on a promotional deal. Look past the interest rate for a moment and look at the whole picture instead. Even at a 0% rate, you are still committing several $100s a month, for years, to an object guaranteed to be worth less every single day you own it. A 0% loan does not stop the vehicle from losing value. It only stops the bank from charging you extra to watch it happen. Ask yourself a simple question the next time a salesperson slides a payment plan across the desk toward you. Would you still want this exact vehicle at this exact price if you had to write one single check today instead of spreading it across 72 months? If the honest answer is no, the payment plan has not made the purchase smarter. It has only made the price easier to hide from yourself. Look at two people side by side. Person A financed a $35,000 truck for 6 years, paying $600 a month with interest, ending up paying roughly $43,000 total by the time the loan closed. Person B bought a reliable 7-year-old car for $9,000 in cash and put that same $600 a month into an index fund for 6 years instead. Person A ended those 6 years with a used truck worth maybe $15,000 and zero savings. Person B ended those 6 years with a working car worth around $4,000 and roughly $52,000 sitting in an account, because the market did the work while person B was busy living life. That gap is not luck. It is not a higher salary. It is one decision repeated every month about where $600 was allowed to go. Notice how quietly this trap sets itself. Nobody sits down and decides on purpose to pay $43,000 for a vehicle worth $15,000. The dealership breaks the number into a small monthly bite, and a small monthly bite feels survivable, even comfortable, month after month. Break a boulder into pebbles and people will happily carry the whole mountain without ever noticing the weight in their hands. That is exactly how financing on a depreciating item works, and the car industry has known it for decades. Understand also why this trap catches responsible, careful people just as often as reckless ones. A responsible person checks their credit score, compares interest rates, and negotiates a fair deal on the loan. All of that responsible behavior still leads to the same destination if the underlying decision, financing a fast depreciating object over many years, was wrong from the start. Being careful about how you make a bad trade does not turn it into a good one. So step one in your life this week is this. Pull up your loan statements tonight and add up every payment tied to something that loses value while you pay for it. Write that number down. Then decide in writing when that payment disappears from your life for good and what you will do with that money the day it does. The second expense to delete is the slow leak of small recurring charges, the ones so small they hide from your attention on purpose. Streaming services stacked on top of each other. Food delivery apps charging a fee just to bring food to your door. A gym membership nobody has visited in 4 months. Software subscriptions renewing quietly every year. None of these charges feel dangerous alone. Together, they are one of the biggest silent killers of a family budget. Understand why this one matters so much even though each charge looks tiny. A single subscription at $15 a month looks like nothing. Most households now carry somewhere between 8 and 12 of these small charges running at once, which regularly adds up to $200 to $400 a month, leaving the account for things half used or fully forgotten. That is not a rounding error. That is a second car payment, invisible, running in the background of a life. Kill the first objection. People say, it's only $15, that's nothing. $15 a month for 30 years, invested instead of spent, grows past $30,000, and that is one single subscription out of a dozen most people are carrying right now. Kill the second objection. People say, I use most of these, I need them. Look honestly at the data most phones and banking apps already track for you. Most people, when they actually check, discover they touched maybe half of what they pay for in the last 30 days. Kill the third objection. People say, canceling and rejoining later is annoying, so it's easier to just keep paying. Being annoyed for 10 minutes once a year costs nothing. NG. Bleeding money every single month for a service you are not using costs a small fortune over a decade. Test this claim on yourself before you dismiss it, because most people are shocked by the results. Pull up your bank app right now and count how many separate recurring charges show up in the last 30 days. Most families guess the number will be around 4 or 5. Most families actually find somewhere between 8 and 14. That gap between the guess and the reality is exactly why this expense survives so long. You cannot delete what you have never bothered to count. Remember also that companies design the cancellation process to be harder than the sign-up process on purpose. Signing up takes 10 seconds and 1 click. Canceling often takes a phone call, a hold time, and a retention agent trained to talk you out of leaving. That imbalance is not an accident. It is a business model built entirely around the hope that you will find canceling annoying enough to simply give up and keep paying. Refuse to give up. 10 minutes of mild annoyance once is a trade worth making every single time. Look at 2 more people. Person A kept 11 small subscriptions running for 10 straight years, averaging $300 a month total, never once auditing the list, spending roughly $36,000 over that decade on things she barely used. Person B did one 30-minute review of every recurring charge, cut it down to 3 services actually used every week, and redirected the leftover $200 a month into a retirement account for those same 10 years. Person A has stacks of old streaming logins and nothing to show for it. Person B has roughly $38,000 sitting in an account, built from money that used to disappear without a fight. One person spent 10 years paying for convenience she never used. Notice why this expense survives longer than almost any other bad habit in a budget. A car payment sits in front of you every month, printed on a statement, impossible to ignore. A $4 increase on a streaming plan buried inside a longer bill barely registers as a decision at all. Companies count on exactly that blindness. They raise prices a little at a time, year after year, betting correctly that most customers will never bother to compare what they are paying today against what they agreed to pay when they first signed up. Watch how this compounds across an entire household instead of just one account. A husband subscribes to 3 services he thinks he checks. A wife carries 2 more she forgot existed. Add a shared streaming bundle, a cloud storage plan nobody remembers approving, and a food app membership renewed automatically every year. None of these people made a bad decision on any single day. They simply never made a decision at all, and silence is exactly how this expense grows. So step 2 in your life this week is this. Open your bank statement and circle every recurring charge you can find, no matter how small. Call each one exactly what it is. Cancel anything you have not used with real enjoyment in the last 30 days. Put the leftover amount, every single month, straight into savings before you have a chance to spend it somewhere else. The third expense to delete is spending built to match the people around you instead of the life you are actually trying to build. This shows up as a house bigger than the family needs, a vacation priced to impress instead of to enjoy, and clothes or gadgets bought because a neighbor, a coworker, or someone online has won. This is the quietest expense of the 3, and often the most expensive, because it hides behind the word normal. Understand why this one cuts the deepest. A family earning $90,000 a year, living in a neighborhood built for families earning $150,000 a year, will spend every extra dollar trying to keep pace with houses, cars, and vacations that do not match their own paycheck. That gap between income and appearance is where entire retirements quietly disappear. Kill the first objection. People say, "I worked hard, I deserve nice things." Working hard is real and it matters. Working hard does not change math. A nice thing bought on borrowed comfort still has to be paid for later, usually with interest, usually with stress attached. Kill the second objection. People say, "It's just one bigger vacation, one time." One bigger vacation, charged instead of saved for, becomes a habit the moment it becomes a pattern repeated every year to keep up with what friends are posting. Kill the third objection. People say, "You can't put a price on experiences." Experiences absolutely matter. A camping trip with your kids and a 5-star resort both create memories. Only one of them creates a credit card balance that follows you home. Notice how often this expense gets defended using the word deserve instead of the word afford. Deserving something. NG and affording something are 2 completely different tests, and the moment a household starts using the first word to justify a purchase, the second word usually stops getting asked at all. A responsible person can absolutely deserve a nice vacation, a nicer car, or a bigger home. Deserving it and having the actual cash to pay for it without financing the difference are 2 separate facts, and only one of them belongs in the spending decision. Watch how social comparison sneaks into decisions that feel completely personal on the surface. Nobody consciously thinks, "I am buying this to impress my neighbor." The thought is quieter than that, usually something closer to, "Everyone has one of these," or "This is just normal for people our age." That quiet comparison is doing far more work in the decision than most people ever admit, and naming it honestly is often the fastest way to break its grip. Here is the third pair. Person A upgraded her house every 5 years to match a rising social circle, financed 2 family vacations a year on credit to keep pace with friends, and carried an average credit balance of $8,000 for 15 straight years, paying mostly interest and never touching the principal. Person B stayed in a comfortable, modest home for those same 15 years, took one meaningful trip a year within her actual budget, and put the difference, roughly $700 a month, into steady long-term investments. Person A is still making payments. Person B built close to $200,000 quietly while telling nobody and competing with nobody. Not bigger houses, bigger freedom. Understand why this third expense is the hardest one for most people to even see, let alone fix. A car payment shows up on a statement. A subscription shows up as a line item. Status spending rarely shows up as one clear number at all, because it hides inside 100 separate decisions that each look reasonable by themselves. A slightly nicer restaurant here. A slightly bigger gift there. A slightly newer phone upgraded a year early. None of these choices feel like status spending in the moment. Stacked together over a decade, they behave exactly like status spending, quietly pulling a family toward a lifestyle that matches everyone else's Instagram feed instead of their own bank balance. Watch what happens the moment someone finally adds these 100 small decisions into one honest number. The number is almost always larger than they expected, and almost always larger than the number they were arguing about on their last car loan or their last subscription bill. That single moment of honesty, seeing the real total for the first time, is usually the turning point that makes the entire 3-part plan finally click into place. So step 3 in your life this week is this. Sit down and write out every expense from the last 90 days that existed mainly to match someone else's lifestyle instead of your own goals. Be honest. Then pick one, just one, and shrink it down to a version that actually fits your paycheck, starting with your very next bill. Now understand the moment where this entire plan usually falls apart, because knowing the 3 expenses is not the hard part. The hard part comes about 3 weeks after you cut them, when life throws a small inconvenience your way and your brain whispers that you have already done so well. You deserve just one exception. That whisper is the most expensive sentence in personal finance. Feel that exact moment for a second. You cut the subscriptions. You skip the upgrade. Then a rough week hits, a friend invites you somewhere, and suddenly the old spending pattern looks less like a mistake and more like comfort you have earned back. Willpower breaks quietly in private, usually late at night, usually justified with a story that sounds reasonable in the moment. Willpower was never the real plan. Structure was always the real plan. Fix this the way any serious business fixes a leak, by removing the decision entirely instead of trying to be strong enough every single day. Set up an automatic transfer the same day your paycheck lands, moving the exact amount you freed up straight into a separate account before your hands can touch it. Delete saved payment cards from apps that make impulse spending one click easy. Make the discipline choice the default choice, so that on your worst, most tired day, the money still moves in the right direction without a single ounce of willpower required. This is the exact spot where most videos about saving money lose people, because most advice stops at spend less and never explains what happens on the hard days. Structure does not care how tired you are. Structure does not negotiate at 11 at night after a bad day. Build the wall once, and the wall protects you on the days you have nothing left to fight with. Picture the actual moment this fails, because it will help you see it coming next time. Someone has done everything right for 18 days straight. Bills paid, subscriptions cut, the new car payment gone. Then a coworker mentions a weekend trip, or a kid asks for something the neighbor's kid already has, or a hard day at work leaves a person exhausted and craving one small reward that feels earned. The credit card comes out. The justification writes itself instantly, fully formed, sounding completely reasonable in the moment. I've been so good lately. It's just this once. I deserve this after the week I've had. Every single one of those sentences is true, and every single one of them is also how the old spending pattern quietly walks back in the front door. Notice that willpower failed at 11 at night, tired, alone, with nobody watching and no system in place to stop the decision. That is not a character flaw. That is simply how human beings are built, and pretending otherwise is exactly why so many budgets fail in the third week instead of the third year. The people who succeed long-term are rarely the ones with more willpower. They are the ones who built a system that never required willpower in the first place, because the money had already moved to a place their late-night self could not reach. I once watched a woman name her savings account something deliberately boring, something that carried zero emotional pull, specifically so that scrolling past it late at night felt as exciting as reading a phone bill. Small trick, real result. Anything that removes friction from the smart choice and adds friction to the impulsive one is worth doing, even if it looks silly to someone else watching from the outside. Here is the whole thesis in one sentence. 3 ordinary expenses, left unchecked, quietly steal decades of freedom from otherwise responsible people. This was never really about money. It was always about what money buys you when it is finally free to work for you instead of against you. Freedom to leave a job that drains you. Freedom to help your kids without panic. Freedom to sleep at night without doing math in your head at 2 in the morning. Replace the word money with the word life for a moment, and the whole picture gets clearer. Delete the payment on something losing value, and you buy back years of your life. Cancel the subscriptions nobody uses, and you buy back peace of mind that was quietly leaking out every month. Stop matching a lifestyle that was never yours to match, and you buy back the freedom to build a life that actually fits you instead of the neighbor's. Dignity does not come from a bigger house or a newer truck sitting in the driveway. It comes from knowing with total certainty that your money is finally working for you instead of the other way around. That is the whole game, not richer for the sake of a number. Free. Picture the life on the other side of these 3 simple deletions, 10 years from today. Picture waking up on a Monday morning and choosing to go to work instead of needing to go to work, because a car payment, a stack of forgotten subscriptions, and a lifestyle built to match other people no longer own a piece of your paycheck before you even wake up. Picture handling a medical bill or a car repair without a single sleepless night, simply because the account you quietly built while everyone else kept spending is finally large enough to absorb a shock without flinching. None of this requires a rare talent. It does not require a lucky stock pick or a business that takes off overnight. It requires exactly 3 decisions, made once, defended with structure instead of willpower, and left alone long enough for time to do the rest of the work. I have watched this exact pattern build modest fortunes out of ordinary paychecks more times than I can count, and I have never once watched it fail for someone who actually stuck with it past the first hard month. Remember Janet and Mike from the beginning of this, the couple earning $9,000 a month with almost nothing saved after 8 years. Nothing about their income needed to change for their story to change. What needed to change was 3 ordinary decisions, repeated every month, defended by structure instead of motivation. The same is true for you. Your paycheck is not the problem you have been told it is. Your paycheck was never the problem at all. Stop measuring your progress against your neighbor's driveway. your coworker's vacation photos, or your cousin's new kitchen. Measure it against one honest number, the amount quietly building in your own account while everyone else keeps spending theirs. That number does not care about appearances. It only grows, slowly, patiently, for as long as you leave it alone and keep feeding it every single month. You spent the next several minutes of your life here, and that matters. The next video builds directly on this one, walking through exactly how much of your income should be moving into that separate account every month, and what to do with it once it starts growing. Hit subscribe because this work is just beginning. This is not content. This is a discipline, and disciplines need people showing up together to survive the long, boring years it takes for them to actually pay off. Start tonight.